So today we're going to be talking about experiences in the gaming industry. I'm going to be asking you guys how you got into the industry, what you've learned about the industry, and I hope the conversation will be interesting. By the way, my name is Luke. I'm in charge of education content at Yodo1, and to those watching, if you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe so that you can see future videos. All right, let's get into the discussion. Maybe someone who wants to share an interesting way that they got into the gaming industry. Something that's out of the ordinary, something that maybe isn't the standard path. And if you want to share a story, that would be, I think, a good way to kick things off. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's Vbor, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe Vbor also you could introduce yourself a little bit, say what you do at Yodo1, and that would give it some context.
Sure.
Yeah.
So my name is Vbor. I am working in Yodo1 in the developer support team, and my roles and responsibility is to onboard the developer and supporting them so that they can successfully complete the integration.
How did you actually get into the gaming industry in general, or Yodo1? Is this the first time you've worked in gaming?
Yeah, so when I was kid, I loved to play games a lot. So in 2018, I get the chance to work with Aptoid. So Aptoid has approached me and they told me that you have to work as a developer support, customer support, and you have to resolve the developer issue. And at the same time, you also have to play the game and you have to make sure that there is no bug in the game. So I found that this is very interesting job. So I have worked for around 2 years with Aptoid. And then, so I was also working in other organizations. But yeah, I was always telling to my wife that I am working in healthcare domain. I have worked in banking domain, but I don't like my job. I wanted to work in gaming zone. I wanted to work in gaming domain. So again, I got the chance to work with Yodo1. I have given the interview. So Marina has taken my interview. And then I was very excited. Yeah. So I was very excited that I'm getting the chance to work with gaming domain. And I feel my job is very interesting. So whenever I am supporting to the developer or the customer, I feel that I am working for my own organization.
That's very cool. Marina, can you share your notes from the interview? Can you share that with us right now? Is that cool?
Right now, I remember I was very impressed because Vbor has very solid experience in customer support roles. So when I was talking to him about his previous experience supporting customers, and he shared some like real stories he faced with customers and supporting overnight, and also how he helped his previous teams optimize certain processes through tools like Zendesk, or I could see that he knew what he was talking about. And that's actually why we did hire him, not really because of the gaming background, more because we see that he could help us raise the bar in the customer support field. And so far, so good. But the notes are secret. The notes are for me.
You guys, yeah. I still want to see them. Am I the only one who I didn't get an interview? I feel a little bit. It's a little unfortunate. Maybe if I had, I wouldn't be here. I mean, probably not.
Maybe that's for Flo. Flo, why didn't Luke get an interview?
Yeah, Flo, why didn't I get an interview? What's up with that?
I didn't get an interview. I don't think anyone at Yodo1 has ever even seen my resume.
Yeah, I don't even have a resume. A lot of privilege. I really did.
I don't think anybody got my resume either. I don't think I ever was asked for one.
I checked you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think everybody checked LinkedIn. That was it.
That's the way it goes now. I mean, sometimes a resume, I feel, I mean, because I've had to interview some people with Yodo1 too. Sometimes a resume is not as it seems too stiff, and I wonder if it's as a format kind of dying out, and LinkedIn is just enough, or maybe just talking to a person is enough. Maybe video asks are enough. Does anyone else have an interesting story about getting into Yodo1 or getting into gaming in general?
I have a story. Don't know if it's interesting enough. So,
Well, if it's not, we'll let you know.
thank you. Do let me know. So
Yeah.
I actually went for an interview for an intern position, and then Marina interviewed me. Marcus, one of our guys, like interviewed me. Then I went back hoping that I will get the internship. At the evening, I actually got a call for a full-time position, And at that time, I was desperate to get an internship because I needed the credit. So I was okay. I get an internship, and that's it. I don't know much about gaming. What I'm going to do, I didn't even know what I will be asked to be doing. And I got this full-time, offer, and then I was like, okay, this is something that's super interesting. And then I started playing games. I started liking games, and now I feel like I'm very lucky because so few people actually get their first job as their career. So I got that, and I really want to be in the gaming, genre or the industry and the ecosystem. That's something I do see myself in. I think in that sense, I consider myself super lucky. I might not be in introducing myself. Should I?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, yeah, maybe a little bit of background is useful.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Riyadh, and I've been living in Beijing before. Now I'm back in Bangladesh, where I'm from, and I'm heading the business development team at Yodo1 Games.
Very cool. So I'm noticing a pattern. Everyone is interviewed by Marina.
Yeah. So
except for the two people who never got interviewed.
Right.
Yeah, I remember Prime.
Two people. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, and myself. I did get an interview actually. When Prime came for the internship interview, I remember we didn't have a room at the office. Do you remember, Prime? Because everything was full, and then we had to go to the roof. So we had the interview in the roof, just chatting, and we talk about football, about Barca. I remember that for sure. And yeah, I do recall going back and discussing feedback with the others and saying, yeah, this guy can do way more than an internship. And then it's when we decided to offer full time. And yeah, it was interesting. We were very impressed by not his titles from Tsinghua, but actually his personality and his confidence in himself.
So actually having a background specifically in playing games or in the industry is not always relevant at all, or at least in this case more about the personality traits. Is it relevant? Because I think that's a common perception of, oh, if you're going to work in the gaming industry, you have to enjoy games, you have to play video games, you have to be a gamer. And I just working here for as long as I have, I've noticed that quite a few people don't really play games, and that seems to be totally fine for them.
It's an interesting one because we put it in some of our job descriptions, like a passion for games, but it really depends on which team you're on. A lot of people aren't big gamers, but there's plenty of other attractive things in the industry and things that people can be passionate about beyond just gaming that will make you a great fit for the gaming industry, I would say.
Yeah. What about you, Flo? Are you a gamer? Are you much of a gamer?
I've never been a gamer. I think the reason is I'm very competitive and I like to win, and I'm terrible at games, and I have always been. So I just don't touch them. Or when I do, then I'm just like, I'll get tired pretty quickly because I'm not good enough. So that makes me not really a gamer now.
Do you want to talk about, because you also mentioned you're one of the other non-interviewees. Do you want to talk about how you got into Yodo1?
It was Yoli. You know this.
Right, I mean, I know that. Well, yeah, I mean, I know, yeah.
I've never actually worked 9 to 5 in an office. I've always been more like traveling, freelancing. I did teaching and writing, and it was writing an article about Yoli, which was, so Yodo1 co-founder James also founded Yoli. I wrote an article about Yoli. James read it and he said, I have another company. Do you want to come and write some articles for us? And that was it.
So he's basically headhunting from his other company.
I guess so.
Yeah, that's what it was like. Yeah. But and you want to talk a little bit about your role as well, what you do? Because you actually changed from something else to what you're doing now, right?
Yeah, I think that's a common pattern at Yodo1. Everyone's always changing what they do. I started writing, editing, and then recruiting, and now HR. And yeah, I don't know what I'll be doing next month.
Hopefully still HR, because
yeah,
I depend desperately on what you're doing right now in HR. I hope please don't change.
Never imagined myself being in HR, but since I have been in this department in the last 3-4 months, I really enjoy it. Like I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm excited to be able to have made that transition, and yeah, excited about where we can go.
Was it relatively easy to move? I mean, how does that sort of thing happen in a company that's I think this company is pretty flexible in that way. I mean, where you can work and what kind of role you do. But how does something like that happen where you go from what you were doing to HR? Is it just a matter of expressing interest? I want to change. I want to do something else, or someone offering you something?
Yeah, I didn't express any interest. I didn't even know it was an option. But James mentioned, I think the thinking was Yoda1 has gone fully remote.
Yeah.
And I was, I guess, technically the first pretty regular, like kind of full-time-ish person who had never been to Beijing and who was always fully remote. So James was like, look, are you interested in making a change into remote recruiting? And I was like, okay. And then from there, it opened up to be like, oh, well, how about leading the entire HR department? Okay, sure.
You're going to get a call in about a week. Hey, we're looking for a CEO. Flo? Leslie, I haven't heard from you yet. I'm curious about your sort of entrance into, well, the gaming industry, Yodo1 in general, whether or not you're a gamer, and whether or not you think that matters.
Sure, yeah. So I've been at Yodo1 for 7 months now. And I've been in and around the gaming industry, I guess, for over a decade now. I was doing ad tech before. And
can you explain what that is to people who don't know?
Sure. So
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. We basically, I was working for ad networks that would help app developers acquire new users through advertisement. So that was what I was doing for since 2010, 11. So pretty much at the very beginning of the industry. Back then, it was like incentivized installs where he was like, download this game and get more coins in the game you're playing right now. And then Apple and Google decided that was not very fair, because it really became whoever had the money to pay for it was getting at the top of the charts. And it wasn't necessarily about the game. So once they changed that, pretty much the whole industry also obviously changed. But at that time, it was all just games. It was pretty much at the beginning of smartphones, it was just all the apps that you had were games, right? It's not until just a couple of years now that you've seen a bit of a switch where you're now seeing social media and streaming channels and finance and whatnot, right? But pretty much 100% of my clientele was gaming. So that's how I got into gaming. And then because of work, and actually my husband, he's a huge gamer, and he's been in gaming pretty much his entire career. He had a gaming studio that got acquired by Kabam. Then he went for a Kabam. Then he worked at Facebook in their gaming department. Then he was at Twitch. So like very, very gaming focused. And then just because we were both in the industries, our circle really became very gaming focused.
That's cool.
Also did my bit of a stint in Beijing from 2006 to 2015. Supposed to be there for 6 months. I think like most people that end up in Beijing, it was just supposed to be a short little trip that turned into almost a decade. And there I met Richard Robinson, who is sort of an industry legend, and he was advising Yodo1 for a bit, and he kind of heard that they're looking to do remote and bringing in more people outside of Beijing and with some gaming experience, and that's how I was introduced to Yodo1. So yeah, I wouldn't describe myself as a hardcore gamer for sure. Like, I'm more of a casual gamer. But I think actually for the gaming industry, I think it's kind of vital to have people that are not gamers, because I think the idea a lot of the times for gamers, they're very passionate about the game itself, and at the end of the game, this is a business. So we also need business-minded people, not necessarily the people who are focusing on the game itself. So yeah, I think it's good, obviously, in whatever industry you're in, to be in the know and be knowledgeable about the industry, and and obviously if you like games, then it's even easier. But I don't think it's necessary, a must for everybody who's looking to get into the gaming industry.
It's quite a saga you've had, going from the humble beginnings of games. I'm thinking, like, what was the one with the cat? That's the first game that I ever had on my phone, where you touched the cat's stomach and he would meow. Was that even a game, or was that an app? That's in my mind, early days apps. But are you talking about even earlier?
No. By 2011, I think 2011, I think Heyday had already come out, so we were a little bit more advanced than that. But it was still pretty much like no. I think that like Heyday was like one of the first AAA games that came into mobile. But before that, it was just like, very, very casual, like one button, click, Floppy Bird style games. Yeah.
I mean, those are still fairly popular too, but it expanded a lot more with that game. That game sort of brought in a new era of genres.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, well, yeah, once I think once the bigger gaming studios got involved, then it was just much easier, right? I think that was one of the things that also what I was doing in Beijing. I started really we were doing some consulting before I got into ad tech and mobile advertising, and in around 2008, right, the big crisis in the US hit, and then all of a sudden all these gaming companies started looking at China for sort of more affordable development centers. So EA, Zynga, Kabam, they all started opening up office in Beijing, and slowly started focusing more on mobile development. And I think that was 2009, 2010. That's when I think really the industry pushed up.
Wow. Well, I'm learning a lot.
I don't quote me on any of this, but
no, I am. I'm quoting you on all of it. I'm writing it down. I'm sending out press releases. Everything you're saying. Yeah. Does anyone have from what Leslie's saying? Does anyone have any kind of follow-up questions or want to add anything?
Actually, just to add something, from speaking with developers, what I realized, I mean, I totally agree with Leslie that once the big guys start developing in mobile, right, everything kind of ramps up faster. And also the fact that these big guys publish games from smaller guys, that kind of incentivize the smaller developers, the indie ones, to get more funding and then be able to keep developing their games. And even some of them end up publishing their own titles, and from their new studios, maybe not like AAA studios, but kind of like that sweet spot middle size developers. So once the big guys also get into funding small ones, and even sometimes mentor them and getting them as part of their studio, and creating this kind of incubators, accelerators, where big guys mentor the small ones and help them grow, kind of like the whole ecosystem keeps growing and accelerates. So yeah, just
from the outside looking in, does it look more fun to be a small studio or part of a big studio? It's a subjective question, but I'm just curious. Because you talk with a lot of developers, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. Most of them, even those that work in big studios, have the dream of having their own. At least many of the people I've talked to, they were working in a big studio before, and maybe Prime Leslie can jump in here too. But many of them work in a big studio before. They see it as like a place to learn, to understand how games are built and how to grow a game, how to publish a game, kind of like get the tricks from the big companies. But many of them, even while they're working in that company, they are developing their own games with a friend, with a colleague, with someone, right? So what I've seen is that many of them, even when they are part of the big company, they have the dream of creating their own studio. That's why you see many of the developers we talk to come from Ubisoft or Gameloft or EA, right? And even when they have their own small studio, they struggle. Even if those guys are super qualified and they have very solid experience, they still struggle growing their small titles, right? So I think that's kind of like the path that many of them want to follow. I'd say especially people who is in game development, because inside a big studio, there's a lot of things, right? As Leslie said, from ad technology to user acquisition. I mean, there's a lot of things, right? So, but I think specifically those that are in game development are the ones who want to have their own studio later. And I think if their studio gets to be successful, that's when they really feel they're enjoying, because they have much more freedom to do the kind of games they like and just to be more creative in the direction that they want to follow. I think that's a bit of the dream.
Yeah, well, I have a story of one, but that matches my experience. I talked to Nick Madonna, the guy from PHL Collective, and that's exactly his story. He was working at a big studio, and it's not that he didn't hate it, or not that he hated it. He just didn't feel as excited as he used to feel about games, and then decided to start his own studio, start a PHL Collective. So that's an interesting story. Does that match with your experience as well, Prime, talking to devs, or is it different?
Definitely. Like most of the cases, it is. I don't see a lot of studios having a lot of people in the team, actually. Like, most of the studios that we see the games of are mostly maybe 10% team, 15% team. If it's a development team, they hardly actually extend their team more than 10 or 15. And that's what I have been seeing, a lot of small team of developers, because even if you're working as a developer in a big studio, their dream is always to have their own. They want to have something that they own, and that's when they struggle, definitely, because they don't have the business knowledge, but definitely the development side is there. So I would voice out with Marina on this, and I have the similar experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it's what you would expect. Leslie, I see you're off mute. You want to jump in?
I was just going to say, I think it's, similar to, I mean, arguably gaming now is bigger than Hollywood, but it's, I would compare it to like, making an indie movie and trying to make it into Hollywood, and then like working at a Hollywood movie, right? Like you definitely, the resources that you have as a big game developer, as a big company, as a big game developer, the perks that you get, it's definitely a lot more comfortable. It is more restricted, that's for sure, in terms of creativity, but it is, you are able to work in much bigger projects. That's where, like, being an indie game developer, first of all, your chances of succeeding are very slim, right? So it's a grind. I can tell you when my husband was developing, when he had his gaming studio, there is days where he literally showed back home at like 5 a.m. because they couldn't find a bug, and they had to make this launch. And it was just, it was a real grind. There was months where they were not sure they were going to be able to make payroll, right? So it's a much more stressful environment, I would say. But I think in that specific case, obviously, being very passionate about what you're doing is really, really key. And I think that's really what drives a lot of these indie developers, is just that they're they truly believe in what they're doing, and they have a huge passion for it, and it's their art, it's their, their baby. So I think it's definitely it's a different environment, but yeah, I would say indie. I have a lot of respect for indie developers. I guess that's what
sure.
I was saying.
Yeah.
How are you defining success? You said it's a minority. Are you defining that as a hit game? Are you defining that as acquisition? How's that being defined?
Yeah, I mean, to be
Making a
honest,
living?
I mean, yeah, making a living would be, I think we could start there. Being able to get your game even to like top 500, I'd say it's already a pretty good top 500 grossing. I think it's already a pretty good place. But it's a lot of competition. It takes a lot of money as well, right? And making sure that you've got those funds, and you've got something backing you, and you've got users that are actually spending. Having enough users to even be able to do some research on your users' behavior and how to optimize them. I mean, it's a really long funnel, and getting to, I would say, like, even just top 500, top 200, it's already I would consider that success for some indie game developers.
So for developers specifically, so the kind of the trend or the pattern that I'm noticing through the conversation is, if you're doing something else that's not game development, if you aren't a gamer or don't really have a passion for gaming, but you want to just work in the industry, not being a gamer it's not a deal breaker. It's fine. And because a lot of people in this company are not big gamers. I'm a gamer, but I actually don't consider me being a gamer that relevant to what I do. I've learned a lot about the industry, but I don't really connect that to the gaming part. But if I were trying to start my own studio, then that would, I think, be, as you were saying, Leslie, a very different thing, and that would be a huge factor just for keeping the enthusiasm up and not losing hope at 5 a.m. when I can't find why the skateboard only has 3 wheels or whatever it is. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to ask one more question to I guess everybody in general. So assuming that people watching this conversation are either thinking about getting into the industry in general, maybe one of the roles that any of us have, or thinking about starting their own studio or just started, and wants to get something that they would get in a year or two, some knowledge that they would learn through experience. I want to know something that you have learned through doing that you can share, that you think would be a valuable insight, something that would help somebody out there who would otherwise learn that through experience. And that's a big ask, but any kind of insights from the point of view of monetization, of making money, making a business with your game, making games, anything like that. Prime, I see you up.
Yeah. Let me start. Maybe I do recommend something for the game developers. I know the industry is super competitive and it's very hard to be ranking maybe top 500. But at the same time, knowing what type of games you need to be making is super important. You see, a lot of game developers are making games, but they don't know maybe what games are players playing. So I would definitely recommend, whenever you are starting a studio, do your research on what type of games are popular. And then make your own unique game, knowing the idea of that game. Okay, so what type of genre is popular, and I need to be working on that genre. So definitely something that we are seeing, that hyper casual games doesn't grow organically these days. So if you don't have the budget, don't make organic, hyper casual games at the start. Make different type of games, maybe simulation game, mid-core games. I think that's super important, because I do work with a lot of indie studios who may not, be successful at this time because they didn't, choose the right genre of games. So that's something I definitely recommend game developers. And something that also they struggle is doing other things, other business related things like monetization, because maybe they're developing the game in Unity engine and they will be using Unity SDK or something. So knowing about monetization, where to place ads, is super important. For that to be doing, I do recommend them to be playing more games. When they play more games, they understand, okay, what is the best practice in the industry. So I think with that note, I would definitely, want the developers to be doing more research and also playing more games. That's from my side. Yeah.
Well, before I go to Marina, I see Marina, you've got something to add as well. But then, how do you? But that's easy to say, right? But I'm just putting myself in the mind, in the mindset of someone who wants to build his own game. I want to build what I want to build, man. I'm an artist. I have my passion for what I want to make. How do I compromise without losing the passion? And I think that's the question that comes up in my mind.
Yeah. Like, I also want to add that game developers make their games from their passion, not only to make money, what I have been seeing. So you need to maybe find similar games to what your passion lies on. So I don't know what's your passion. I don't know what games you have been playing from your childhood. Maybe something that is successful, because if you check, most of the genres are already successful. You see, like, not that a genre hasn't been penetrated already. So most of them are. So the idea is not for you to be actually changing your mind, and just, if you want to make a game that is maybe fun and then you started making a horror game, it's not like that, because that's not your passion, and you will never be as successful as a developer who has the passion to be making horror games. So do follow your passion, but for sure do some research on what type of games I should be making. Not like, okay, I have a passion and I just go ahead and make it. Maybe then after you put so much effort in designing and in coding and developing the game, and you put it on App Store and Play Store, you don't get any users, and you're like, okay, what am I doing with my life? Things happen like that with developers.
So you start asking yourself existential questions. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Marina?
I changed my career or something. So you don't want.
What am I doing with my life?
So I actually think that this topic connects very well with what Leslie said before, of like, oh, if you have your own studio and you're starting your own project, you need to be very passionate. Because to me, that's like, yes, but then you sometimes are so focused on what's your passion and so sure about the kind of game you want to make that you are not being strategic enough. Because we see this a lot, right? Like, yeah, I've been working on this game for a lot of time. I love this. I mean, I know this is going to work. This is not what people want, right? So you need to have your passion, but if you can have someone in your team who can give you another point of view and who can challenge all your assumptions. For example, when I see solo developers, they usually are like harder to make them change their mind. If you have a partner, if you have a 3-people team, if you have different people in your team that like different kind of games, who are like know about different things, you're gonna get more point of views, and then you have more chances to get it right. Because I think it's important to have your passion, but you need to be strategic. I mean, I have experience with one of our partners. They were making games that were what they liked and what they thought was going to be successful for like 5 years, making zero money. They were about to shut down. And then they tried a new genre that they knew was trending through checking like keywords, what people was researching. They hired a company to know what kind of words were players looking for when in their stores, and then realized there was a niche in the market for certain kind of games, right? And that's not the games they like to play. But they know that there were not many games in that market, and that there was a good opportunity in there. They tried with one game, it went well, they kept going, more games, right? So I think you need to find the balance. But this happens in gaming, and I think in any kind of startup. Sometimes if you only have your own idea, following your passion, you can fall in the trap of not being strategic enough in terms of, I want this to be successful and I want to be living from it, right? I think that's what most of the developers we talk to want, just be able to make money and have a living from their game.
I think that's really good advice to almost any artist as well. I have a friend who recently became successful from not successful as a digital artist, and it was just a matter of, wait a second, maybe I don't have to be a 100% purist all the time. Maybe I can actually think about how my work fits into the broader world. And as soon as he did that, it was like, oh, okay, well, I'm successful now. Great, now I can do whatever I want. So it's that's good advice.
And
Vbor,
if I can
go ahead,
suggest
Marina.
one more thing
Sure,
as like
sure.
a practical advice that is a common like thing we see in many developers, it is a long time of developing a game for then testing it and seeing it's not successful. So if you're an indie studio and you know you have a limited budget and you're not going to be able to sustain like payroll and development costs for a very long time, try to do maybe something more simple, like test your assumptions, make sure that what you're making is what people want. Don't spend like 1.5 years making a game without getting any feedback from players, only from your family and friends, because then you're going to launch it. It's not successful, you don't have any more budget, and you have to shut down. So I would say the easier you can validate your assumptions and get feedback from players, etc., the better. And because maybe you decide to kill the project and do something different. So don't take like super long. Okay, I'm seeing a very happy family over there.
Yeah.
Getting very distracted. Hello. But yeah, that was the point.
I mean to cut you off there, Marina.
Yeah, that's good
If I could
advice.
just
Yeah, Leslie? Sure.
add
Yeah, Leslie.
a very, very famous and great example of what just Marina was saying, is Rovio, right? Like Rovio famously were like 12 guys working, you know, on multiple games. I think they did over 50 games, and they were about to shut down. They were out of money. They were done. They had tried so many different games, and then they came up with Angry Birds, and then that was it, right? So like, I think they are definitely the poster child, I would say, for what Marina was just saying. It's just
Was
keep
there
trying,
something
keep
special
iterating.
about Angry Birds, or was it just that was the iteration that worked?
That was the iteration. They were not entirely clear, but they what was it, right? It was, I think the mechanics obviously was very successful, but and then, you know, they just doubled down on that. They were like, okay, this was a hit, let's just squeeze this, right? And now there's like Angry Birds theme parks. Yeah. There's like theme parks and lunch boxes, and you know, and they cashed out pretty nicely, and then left.
Yeah, that's good advice. So maybe the iteration right before was Angry Armadillos, and then they were like, wait a second, birds. Yes, birds. It was that one change that made all the difference. Vbor, do you want to jump in?
Yeah.
And then I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so this is especially for the developer who are confused that where should they monetize their game. So I would say Yodo1. Why? Because we have a dedicated team. So I have worked with multiple organizations where I have seen in the first time that multiple teams are working together. They discuss and they give the same priority to all the developers, whether the developer is a big, whether the developer is a medium, or whether the developer is very new. So whenever they raise any problem, whether it's a small problem or it's a big problem, so we discuss that problem in a team. So we have different teams, we unite together, we discuss all the problem, and we come up with the solution. So I mean to say that we are giving the priority to each and every developer. So Yodo1 is the best platform to monetize your game, and we are helping the developers in various things. Good. Yeah, add monetization. So if they are facing the issue related to ANR and crash, if they feel that their eCPM is low, anything, whether this is small, whether this is big, we are listening to each and every developer. We are working very hard to give the solution, and we are ready and available for each and everyone.
And Vbor, you're not being coerced into saying this, are you? In the live? No. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. So it's sort of you don't have the resources as a very small studio to do some of the things that big studios can do, all of the experimentation. So a good option, especially when it comes to monetization, is Yodo1. That's a great point. Okay. Yeah. Does anybody want to add anything else on that or anything else? I think we've explored a lot. I appreciate you guys. All right. Well, we're going to do more of these in the future, so I hope you guys can join. To those watching, thanks for hanging out with us. If you want to see more of these or other videos that we put out on our channel, make sure that you like and subscribe, and also you can check out our our courses. We have a course on the business of mobile gaming if you want to learn more about it. And otherwise, as Vbor said, if you've got a game, check out Yodo1. We can help you out. We can be your partner.